The night was electric. The stadium was packed with thousands of screaming fans, every seat taken, every spotlight focused on the grand stage. Michael Jackson, the king of pop himself, had just walked out wearing his signature white shirt tucked into black pants, the crowd exploding in deafening cheers. The air was alive with energy, the beat of the drums shaking the ground. But somewhere backstage, a very different kind of chaos was brewing. Mr. Bean, dressed in his wrinkled brown suit and striped tie, wasn't supposed to be there at all. He had sneaked in through the wrong door, holding a large tub of popcorn and a fizzy soda. He tried to act like he was part of the crew, but in typical Bean fashion, he stumbled. The soda spilled all over a tangle of electrical wires, sparks shot up, and the stage lights flickered dramatically. The crowd thought it was part of the show and roared even louder. Bean, blinking nervously, dusted himself off and whispered to himself, "Oh dear," before shuffling toward the stage with wide, innocent eyes. As the music began to build, a giant speaker on wheels was pushed across the stage. Somehow, Mr. Bean ended up sitting on it, clutching his popcorn like it was a lifeline. Before anyone could stop him, the speaker rolled straight into the spotlight, carrying him along for the ride. The audience gasped, then laughed, assuming this must be some kind of surprise comedy act. Michael Jackson paused mid-step, raising his eyebrow in pure disbelief. Bean hopped off, adjusted his tie, and gave an awkward little bow, trying to blend in with the backup dancers. He shuffled to the side, pretending to know the choreography, but his movements were stiff and ridiculous. Arms flailing, knees wobbling, face utterly serious as if he were auditioning for the role of world's worst dancer. The dancers tried to keep straight faces, but even MJ himself cracked a smile, shaking his head. The iconic beat of Billie Jean dropped, and the spotlight burned brighter. Michael slid backward into his flawless moonwalk, the audience screaming in adoration. Then, right beside him, Mr. Bean decided to give it a try. He planted his feet firmly, furrowed his brows, and attempted the move, only to moonwalk forward. The crowd burst out laughing. Not discouraged, Bean turned sideways and accidentally moonwalked into a spotlight stand, blinding himself. He staggered, covered his eyes, and then proudly produced a shiny oven mitt from his jacket pocket. He slipped it on like it was Michael's famous glittering glove and waved dramatically at the audience, who absolutely lost it. Half of the stadium screamed for MJ. The other half was now chanting Bean, Bean, Bean. Michael couldn't help but grin at the ridiculousness of it all. Intrigued, Michael walked over with a mischievous twinkle in his eye and held out his microphone. Bean froze. He looked at the MIC, then at Michael, then back at the MIC slowly. Nervously, he took it and leaned forward. In his squeakiest, most awkward attempt, he let out a single hee-hee. The stadium erupted in laughter, shaking the rafters. Encouraged, Bean cleared his throat and tried to sing a line, but it came out completely off-key, flat, and ridiculous. Michael jumped in immediately, harmonizing over Bean's disaster and somehow making it sound musical. The crowd cheered at the unexpected duet. Security guards moved in, ready to drag Bean away, but MJ raised his hand, signaling for them to stop. He wanted to see where this chaos was going. Now that he had permission, Bean went wild. He pulled random objects out of his jacket like a magician gone wrong. First, a rubber chicken, which he tried to use as a microphone. Then, his beloved teddy bear, which he proudly held up to the camera. Finally, a tiny toy trumpet, which he blew into with all his might. The sound was awful, shrill, squeaky, and completely offbeat. But Michael, ever the genius performer, worked it into the rhythm, dancing and clapping along. Fans couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Phones went up everywhere, and within minutes, clips of Michael Jackson and Mr. Bean's surprise duet were exploding all over social media. What started as a mistake had turned into the most viral concert performance ever seen. Not satisfied, Bean snuck off stage for a moment and reappeared seconds later in a hilarious knockoff version of MJ's outfit. He wore a tiny black hat that barely fit his head, a sparkling belt that dangled down to his knees, and of course, mismatched shoes. Strutting to the center, he tipped his hat like Michael and attempted the famous spin. He spun, and spun, and spun, until he got dizzy and toppled straight into the drummer's set. Crash! Cymbals flew, drums rolled, and somehow the mess turned into a thundering drum solo. Bean scrambled to his feet, his tie now stuck to the drumstick, but the audience was howling with laughter. Michael bent over laughing too, shaking his head in disbelief. The finale was coming. Michael prepared to perform his legendary lean move, tilting impossibly forward as the crowd held their breath. Beside him, Bean was ready with his own version. He had taped his shoes to the stage floor with strips of duct tape, grinning smugly. As Michael leaned gracefully, Bean leaned too, and got completely stuck. He tried to pull himself upright but failed, wobbling like a frozen statue. Desperate, he tugged harder, ripping the tape, and flew forward into an accidental cartwheel across the stage. The crowd exploded in laughter and applause, thinking it was a planned stunt. Then, just as Bean landed flat on his back, the confetti cannons misfired early, blasting both him and MJ with a rainbow storm of glitter and paper. It was chaos, and the fans loved every second. Finally, security decided enough was enough and moved in. They grabbed Bean by the arms and started to drag him away. He looked heartbroken, clutching his teddy bear, waving goodbye to the audience with sad puppy eyes. But then something magical happened. The crowd, now completely enchanted by him, started chanting, "We want Bean. We want Bean." Michael paused, looked at the fans, then at Bean, and burst out laughing. He waved the guards away and motioned for Bean to return. Together, the two of them stood at the front of the stage, side by side. Michael pointed dramatically at the crowd. Bean copied him, pointing awkwardly in the opposite direction, which made the audience laugh even more. The two bowed together as the stadium shook with applause. The narrator's voice boomed over the final freeze frame of Bean and Michael standing side by side under the glittering lights. This was the crash nobody expected, but everyone will remember. If you laughed even once, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and comment "Yes Bean" below. Who knows, maybe next time, Mr. Bean really will join the King of Pop's tour.